Hey, welcome in. This is Kyle is Wonderful, and this is the WWE Raw review for June 13th, 2022. And the show literally just finished. Overall, decent show. Um, wasn't anything groundbreaking, but definitely a lot of talking points to get to going out of the show. And we'll get into all of that. And maybe the match of the night thrown down definitely as a contender to be the match of the week uh, in any company once we're all the way through. So we'll get into it. Thanks again for tuning in. You can check out. I've been busy this weekend. We've got the New Japan Dominion review as well as the NWA Always Ready Matt Cardona themed pay per view as well. And on Friday night, I had the first episode of the wonderful wrestling podcast, and that ended up going 3 hours, and I still had more I wanted to talk about. So check that one out as well if you enjoy this review. I thought I would start tonight's show out a little bit different than other than just going straight into the action. Um because it was a pretty pivotal moment last week. We had Cody officially is now going to be injured. They said on SmackDown that Cody's going to be out about 9 months, but that's just to be a on the safe side and B make it look like Cody had a faster return when he does indeed return somewhere around January for the Royal Rumble. So expect to see Cody back on TV at the very least just after Christmas. He might show up, of course, anytime. You might see Cody on any episode just popping up, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna at least not see him on TV for a little bit, and he's going to come back a megastar. And the rumors are that he's probably going to win the Royal Rumble and beat Roman Reigns if Roman Reigns is indeed the champion still once we get to WrestleMania. That's a possibility. Although everybody wants The Rock versus Roman Reigns, so maybe Roman's not the champion. And in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, Roman Reigns versus The Rock doesn't need any titles on the line. The title in that match is who's the true head of the table of the Anoa'i family. So, um, like I was saying, I'm not going to jump straight into the action. You can skip ahead. Once you see this Raw logo back again, you'll know that I'm done with the first segment. But I am going to remove the Raw logo right now and put up a different logo. While I'm on the big screen, though, just to know what you're getting into, I'm probably one of the only 1,000 people in the world with a 2014 Bull Buchanan Bullfit T-shirt. So that's the kind of, um, my, you know, that I'm the kind of person. That's the kind of person I am going into this review. So let me bring up this other screen. It's going to be the Wikipedia for the roster. I've got it on the Raw roster. And I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but I figured with Cody now being injured and also Edge getting kicked out of Judgment Day, and while that happened, Finn Balor turned heel. So I thought it was a good time to take stock of the Raw roster, and I think I'm gonna do the same for NXT and SmackDown as well. At the beginning of those reviews that you can find later on this week. I'll also be doing AEW, New Japan, NWA, and go from there. I might be able to add MLW to the rotation and maybe something else as well. So definitely tune in. I've also been doing a lot of universe mode since I have a lot of knowledge. I started with, of course, WWE/NXT. So you're probably not going to find a deeper universe mode in the world as far as all the performance center people I have. So if you're into that thing, you can also find this on the channel. Without further ado, let's get into the Raw roster. Let's take stock. It's what, June 13th, 2022. So we're 6 months into almost at the halfway point of the year. It's been a pretty good year. So we started out with a bang at day one. If you remember, Roman had COVID, so then he couldn't fight Brock. Brock got added to the match. Big E lost his title, and now Big E's injured, and a lot has happened since then. So let's take stock real quick. I'm not going to get into it too much, but AJ Styles, of course, the first one on the roster here. He's had one of the legends on the roster, and one of the things that we know about Raw is after the draft last year, we all knew that Raw had the much better and deeper roster than the SmackDown roster, and so it continues to this day. Until the next draft, maybe they'll even it out a little more. But Raw definitely has talent up and down. So AJ Styles first on our list here. He's a legend. I fell in love with him in about 2004 when I randomly ordered a TNA when they had the weekly pay-per-views, and been a big fan of him since. Followed his whole career. He's been spending most of the year feuding with Edge. Um, Come to think of it, I can't remember what he was doing in January and February, but around when Edge wanted an opponent for WrestleMania, AJ stepped in, Edge turned heel. Then at WrestleMania, Damian Priest distracted AJ without really having to do anything. It was kind of dumb, but that's when the Judgment Day formed. AJ's been feuding with them ever since. Now, the last time we saw AJ was at Hell in the Cell pay-per-view was 2 weeks ago, and he was busted open pretty bad in that match in a losing effort. And now, since he was gone, his friend Finn Balor turned heel and joined the Judgment Day with Edge being kicked out. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually, when Edge comes back, there'll be a Edge AJ tag team that we would have never expected a month ago. But that's where he's currently at. And Akira Tozawa, he's been in the 24/7 segments. He married not Dana Brooke, but Tamina, and Reggie married Dana Brooke at the same time. So just there for the comedy segments. He was brought in and it for the cruiserweight division. There's no longer a cruiserweight division, and just pretty much has been stuck in the 24/7 division ever since, which is the comic relief segment. Angelo Dawkins, part of the Street Profits tag team. He's been improving. He's probably in the best shape of his life, kind of losing a little bit of the belly that he had. Been doing good things. He had a big win. I think it was last year, but maybe it was this year in his hometown singles match in Cincinnati. And other than that, Street Profits have been right there. Probably the second best tag team on the Raw roster after Rated RKO all year. And that included having KO and Seth in there, as well as um, Alpha Academy. So Street Profits are the current number one contenders for the Usos Unified Tag Team titles. And I'm assuming we'll probably get that match at Money in the Bank. So we'll see if Street Profits can get the titles. But Angelo Dawkins often is looked down upon as the Marty Jannetty to Montez Ford's Shawn Michaels. So he looks to be in the best shape of his life, and I hope he can have a good career going forward. I remember watching him in NXT just starting out. He wasn't that good, and he improved a lot since then. So Bobby Lashley, probably one of the most over baby faces. The crowds really give him great reactions ever since he got rid of MVP. And now he's in this endless feud with MVP and Omos that nobody wants to see. So hopefully we don't see that anymore. Although now it looked like after last week's Raw, Bobby Lashley was going to enter a feud with Austin Theory, potentially over the U.S. title, and potentially Bobby Lashley winning the U.S. title. But he would be a good consideration for the Money in the Bank match, but I don't know if he's going to qualify. So instead, maybe at Money in the Bank, he'll fight for the U.S. title. Cedric Alexander, ever since the Hurt Business broke up, which was Bobby Lashley, MVP, Cedric, and Shelton Benjamin, ever since that happened, him and Shelton Benjamin have basically been the lowest tag team on the roster, barely ever getting a win, barely being on TV or doing anything significant. And the only time they ever have any kind of story is they want back in the Hurt Business, and they always are denied. So they've definitely been um, demoted as far as that goes. Chad Gable has had a great year. He's gotten over a couple phrases such as "shoosh" and thank you. So Chad Gable's been having a good year. It looks like he might be the first feud for Gable Steveson whenever that happens. It might be all the way till next WrestleMania, but you could see Chad Gable getting a WrestleMania match in Hollywood against Bobby Steveson. Now, what I did in my universe mode, I just went out there and had Bobby Steveson versus Brock Lesnar at the next WrestleMania in Hollywood. The two best heavyweights to ever come out of the rich history of Minnesota Gophers, Golden Gophers wrestling. And I think that would be a good match. And you put Stevenson over in that match, having beat Bobby Lashley in his first ever match, and you've got a star on your hands. If you and by putting those two in the ring as well, they'll also show that Bobby Stevenson is huge. He's almost Brock Lesnar size. He's not nobody's Brock Lesnar, but that'll be a good way to debut him. Meanwhile, Chad Gable currently pretty low on the totem pole, but every backstage segment he has is a winner. Ciampa, probably the greatest NXT creation ever. Not to say that he wasn't good beforehand. When I went to the farewell match for Kevin Steen and ROH, there was two people that I saw at that live event here in Detroit. It was taped for television, but I was there for it. And Tommaso Ciampa was one of those people. The other one was Kyle O'Reilly. And both of those have definitely developed into pretty good, or I mean, amazing wrestlers and on their way to hopefully becoming stars. Ciampa, all that stuff in NXT doesn't seem to we know like a lot of that doesn't translate to the main roster. So ever since Ciampa's come up to the main roster 2 months ago, he's had a few matches. He looks like he might be a henchman for the Miz or some kind of alliance. He's been sneak attacking people like Mustafa Ali and on the last episode Riddle. So um, he doesn't seem to be getting the respect that he should have. So Cody Rhodes came in from AEW, made a name for himself after being released from WWE or wanting to get released because he was stuck in the Stardust gimmick. So that was in 2016. Helped create AEW. Came back earlier this year at WrestleMania. Had a classic trilogy of matches with Seth Rollins, winning all three of them, and of course wrestling with a completely torn from the bone pectoral muscle that was heavily bruised and swollen for about 26 minutes, 27 minutes against Seth Rollins in a Hell in a Cell match just 2 weeks ago. So he had his surgery last week, and hopefully he'll be back for the Royal Rumble as one of the biggest stars and probably going to win the whatever version of the WWE title or Universe title there is at that point. Damian Priest had slid down the card throughout the last year after being at the previous year's WrestleMania tag teaming with Bad Bunny, the rapper. Priest had I think he had multiple U.S. title reigns and a lot of wins over like Finn Balor, who now, oddly enough, he's teaming with. And I would love to see that become a tag team. But kind of the Judgment Stage thing is that every man's for themselves. So they might stick singles wrestlers and just maybe one in the WWE heavyweight division and one in the US division. But again, Roman's kind of holding the belts hostage right now. So there only is the US title. So maybe we will go the tag team route with those two. And we could get an Usos versus Damian Priest and Finn Balor matchup going on. Dolph Ziggler, one of the longest tenured. He's been in WWE since like 2006, 2007, something around those lines. Come a long way. After multiple failed gimmicks, they gave him the worst name ever, Dolph Ziggler. Could you imagine someone Dolph Ziggler being WWE champion ever? And that's exactly what he did. Dolph Ziggler went on to win the World Heavyweight Championship and had multiple reigns. And still on the roster to this day, can give you a good match when you want to. They've got him stuck in this tag team with Robert Roode, where I think both of those guys are great, but they're never on TV. Last week we saw that it looked like they were going to have an Omos versus Ziggler and Robert Roode feud, but then this week the Dirty Dog Ziggler and Robert Roode aren't even on television. Spoiler alert. So Dominic Mysterio has not improved whatsoever, in my opinion. Probably we saw him once in I should have mentioned NXT. That weirdly Dolph Ziggler went to NXT and won the title from Braun Breaker before losing it back to Braun Breaker. So, but he wasn't doing anything before that, and hasn't been doing anything after that. So that was just like an isolated incident, basically. Dominic Mysterio, the son of Rey Mysterio, he doesn't even have a picture on his Wikipedia page here, but um, hasn't improved whatsoever, in my opinion, in the 2 years he's been on WWE, which is not a good thing. We saw him in NXT once, and he looked a lot more like that was his element. So hopefully Dominic can get back to NXT fairly soon. I wouldn't mind Ray just being a single star for the last year or two that he has in his career. Edge, of course, I kind of already told you his story. He feuded with AJ Styles at WrestleMania, turning heel in the process, having Damian Priest join him, and then Rhea Ripley. They formed the Judgment Day, where Edge would then somewhat directionless at the beginning of the stable, and the stable never really got off the ground. And Edge was just running down the crowd, like talking about their sports teams being bad and stuff. So that was kind of been a disappointment. The AJ versus Edge match wasn't necessarily that great. It was a letdown as far as a dream match at WrestleMania goes. Edge is probably, even as much as I like AJ Styles, and my first ever favorite was Shawn Michaels, and now I can recognize that Bret Hart is probably one of the best of all time as well. I still consider Edge my favorite wrestler of all time, and currently my favorite wrestler is Eddie Kingston, but Edge probably my favorite wrestler of all time. A lot of that has to do with my dislike of John Cena, but still, Edge probably should be doing some better stuff. It looks like they've got him penciled in to take over Cody Rhodes' spot as far as the babyface side of Raw, and um, we don't know when he's going to come back, but we'll see what happens. So this is going a lot longer than I thought. So apologies for that. I will get into the Raw review, but Ezekiel, he is Elias, and they're just we haven't seen Elias. We didn't see Elias on TV for like 7 or 8 months. He finally came back shaved and called himself Ezekiel, Elias's younger brother. So not a I don't know where they can go with this story, but we'll find out a little bit more about it later tonight. Finn Balor, like I said, just turned heel and joined the Judgment Day. Gable Steveson, I told you about what I thought about him. Kevin Owens had the big match against Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania, then immediately got put into the Ezekiel storyline, where he's currently stuck in the Ezekiel storyline. But still, if anybody's going to be able to get a bad comedy gimmick over, it's going to be KO. Before WrestleMania, he had a great tag team with Seth Rollins, where one of the matches of the year, if you guys remember, I was on a random Raw. It was Rated RK Bro versus Owens and Rollins versus, I think it was Alpha Academy, but it might have been Street Profits. It was probably Street Profits, but I'll have to look that up. But that triple threat tag team match was great. The Miz, he turned on Logan Paul, his partner at WrestleMania. That was the big story there. Before that, if you remember, at Royal Rumble, there was a big feud: Edge and Beth Phoenix, real life married couple, versus The Miz and Maurice, real life married couple. And then ever since then, he's been hosting basically Miz TV every single night on Raw, and furthers along storylines and has been in matches himself. Montez Ford, I told you about, the Shawn Michaels of the Street Profits, continues to improve, and we will get a singles match from Montez Ford tonight. So he always looks to be the one that WWE is going to push more than Angelo Dawkins. Mustafa Ali, he had the whole spat where he asked for his release. He said something about that they wanted WWE to do a storyline with him that he was uncomfortable doing. I don't want to speculate, but it maybe could have been something about his Muslim heritage or something along those lines. We will never know, and I don't want to speculate, which I just did, but you know what I mean. I'm not saying it was for sure, but he eventually made his return after not getting a release. And despite, like, some people say, oh yeah, well, he's had matches, and they even had him in a U.S. title match in his hometown against Theory, but I still think they're just trying to bury Mustafa Ali to have him, in quote unquote, in their own mind, lose any like credibility he's had. MVP, he's been, I mean, mostly a manager, but now he's been wrestling. He had a match at Hell in the Cell, and he actually has a match tonight. So he was managing the Hurt Business, and he was with Bobby Lashley, and he was offended that Bobby Lashley didn't want MVP to accompany him in it. Bobby Lashley's match against Omos at WrestleMania, where Lashley won. MVP then turned on Lashley like the next night and joined forces with Omos, who Omos is the next one on the list. Now being managed by MVP, he really hasn't improved in the ring whatsoever. I think it was just at the end of the year he had turned heel on AJ, which was his tag partner. He's okay in a tag team where he only has to be in the ring for like 30 seconds to a minute at a time, 2 minutes maximum, but not really good at this current time at a one on one match. Always has room to improve. He's not like super old, but also it's already law of diminishing values. When you got a giant and you see him get pinned or you see him get knocked down, like Lashley knocked him off his feet for his match at WrestleMania, every time that happens, the law of diminishing returns makes him less of an effective giant going forward. So basically, it's only a matter of time before Omos is dancing, just like they recently had Shanky do, where Shanky never even got the push. He just was there forever doing nothing, and now he's dancing. So Omos, I would expect to be in a comedy gimmick before the end of the year. Otis, he's the tag team partner of Chad Gable. He doesn't get to talk as much, but still just as charismatic as ever. He had a big face run where he had the whole Money in the Bank, and he had Mandy Rose as a girlfriend and feuded with The Miz, but lost his Money in the Bank, and basically has been relegated to having no character. They shaved his face, but he's still pretty funny. His chemistry with Chad Gable is really good, but Alpha Academy isn't really taken serious like they should be. Randy Orton, he's had a career resurgence. It's been over a year now that he's been teaming with Riddle, where everybody kind of expected Riddle to or Randy to turn on Riddle like within the first couple months, and maybe that was the story going into it. But it just seemed to gel. The chemistry was there. The crowd loved it, and I think WWE just decided to run with it, which is a great decision. So maybe we'll never have the breakup of RK Bro, and this will be the Vipers like redemption story of never. His whole story throughout his entire career is turning on his anybody that he's aligned with. So that could be a part of Randy Orton's story where Riddle was the key to unlock him not being such a Viper anymore. Currently, as you can see, out with a back injury. I'm not quite sure if that's kayfabe, meaning like storyline, and he's not really hurt, or if he's actually hurt. I'm sure he has some bumps and bruises that he is now on vacation healing up. That part is like 100% true. So I'm sure his back does hurt him, and he's just home healing. But I don't think it's one of those things where he's going to be out for months and months and months, or like retiring, like they have us kind of believing. I think we'll see Randy Orton pretty soon. He's just healing up at home. Reggie, he's kind of had a weird gimmick ever since being on the roster, where he was like the love interest of Nia Jax, among other people. Now he was like basically, it looked like he only wanted to date Dana Brooke because he wanted to steal her 24/7 title. Which, like, this whole thing, like, why would you even want the 24/7 title? Like, maybe kayfabe, you get an extra like 1,000, 2,000, $5,000 a week every time you hold, and that's something they should just they should say that on Raw if they're gonna keep doing these segments, even though we all know like this is a storyline. They should say like, oh, if you're 24/7 champion, you get a $5,000 bonus every week you hold it, something like that. Just to, like, why else would these freaking people want that title? Rey Mysterio, a legend. I pretty much told you his story. I would like to see him transition back to a singles wrestler and have Dom go back to uh, in NXT. And we do get Rey Mysterio in the main event tonight, but it's not the true main event. There was a segment after that, and the match was short and not very good. So hopefully Rey Mysterio can have some good matches before the end of his career. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind seeing him finish his career in AEW for a year or two. Um, and maybe some shows in AAA and New Japan. So I wouldn't mind seeing that. Riddle, definitely over with the crowd. It's been a great year for Riddle, despite any controversies he has in his real life. His on-screen character is very likable, and it's over with the crowd as a babyface. He's getting a title shot this Friday against Roman Reigns. Nobody thinks he has a shot in the world against Roman Reigns to win the unified universal title, but I mean, you just never know. They could pull the trigger and put it on Riddle. So I would love to see that. Robert Roode, I basically told you he's stuck in that tag team with Dolph Ziggler, and he doesn't even have the NXT title reign like Ziggler had. So an even worse year for him. Our Truth, another one that's stuck in the 24/7 title, but Our Truth is, despite being in it, older, is still can go in the ring. So I'm pretty sure he's on the roster. A, because he's very charismatic and has great segments, and B, does a lot of the live when they have the live events that aren't televised. Our Truth is probably having a lot of matches in those ones and can hype up the crowd pretty well with his rapping. We haven't seen Our Truth rap on TV much. I did tweet Our Truth. I'm not someone that tweets wrestlers often, but I tweeted Our Truth last night. Can we get you rapping on Raw tonight? And he liked it about 15 minutes later. But I don't even think we saw Our Truth tonight, unfortunately. But maybe he had a match on main event. I'll have to look, which means he wrapped himself to the ring. So I'll have to look out for that. Seth Rollins. I was on the podcast last week saying I wish he would have just turned face, but after looking at it and like this week, after watching this week, it's probably a good decision to keep him heel. I just wish he would stop the laughing, which is really cringe. But I think him and Becky both think that if they do cringe things, it'll get him heel heat, which they're kind of correct. But I don't know if that's the right kind of heel heat or what. But I don't know the answer. Anyway, Seth Rollins is one of the top stars in the world, and has a great match tonight. Spoiler alert. Shelton Benjamin, I told you he's even lower than Cedric. He's not even seen on TV at this point. Cedric's been alone, so I'm not quite sure if Shelton's injured, but very low on the totem pole. Theory, current U.S. champion, the only champion, singles champion the only champion period on Raw. Now that they lost the tag titles, well, for the men, I mean. So the only ships on Raw period are Theory with the U.S. title and Bianca Belair with the Raw Women's title. Every other title is currently over on SmackDown. And Theory looks to be set for a huge push. Rumors have been that he's going to fight John Cena at SummerSlam. We get a little bit of hints of that, a name drop by Theory earlier. So I expect that we will see Theory versus John Cena very soon. And if Theory doesn't win that match against John Cena, I'm going to be pissed. Like, really pissed. So T-Bar, that's Dominic Dijakovic or Dominic Dijak, if you know him from ROH. He's a great wrestler, had a great character and put on great matches in NXT, but then got put in Retribution with the terrible T-Bar name and gimmick, and has been stuck being T-Bar ever since. He doesn't wear the mask anymore, but still has the face and the T-Bar name and music. He's stuck in the 24/7 segments ever since then without ever talking. So, and just is on the main event show wearing terrible brown tights recently. So hopefully they make him Dominic Dijak or release him so I can see Dominic Dijak in other companies. I would love to see Dominic Dijak in NWA and New Japan as well. Veer, um, he's in the main event against Rave tonight. Like I said, there is a segment after that match, but Veer, after they said Veer's coming to Raw for 5 or 6 weeks, every single week they ran a vignette. He finally came, and it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, they didn't make it a big deal. He's basically been feuding with the Mysterios ever since his debut after WrestleMania for 2 months now, and now he's finally fought both in one-on-one matches. So maybe we can get something new with Veer starting next week. And there is a third champion on Raw. My mistake. Dana Brooke, the 24/7 champion. So just to quickly go through the women, this went a lot longer than I expected. I'm almost at a half hour. Apologies for that. Alexa Bliss, she was doing the therapy gimmicks. She was at if you remember last year at Elimination Chamber, she was fighting Charlotte, and Charlotte ripped up her Lily doll because Alexa Bliss basically turned into the female version of the Fiend once they released the Fiend Bray Wyatt. But for whatever reason, these Lily dolls were selling um, in the WWEshop.com like hotcakes. So they continue to have Alexa Bliss carry the Lily doll out to this day. After 6 meaningless therapy segments, the the therapist gave her. He said, "Oh, here's a new Lily doll with the original stuffing of the old one." And he said, "If you have Lily near you, you'll be fine. But if Lily's not near you, um, then you're in trouble." So, the next time we saw her was at the Elimination Chamber match in Saudi Arabia. She did not have Lily with her, and she was the evil version. Then we didn't see her for like a long time, maybe 2 months, maybe even more. She finally returned probably after WrestleMania, so it was like 3 months. February, March, April, so 2 months maybe. Um, Came back, she's got Lily with her. Now she's just a bland, boring baby face that doesn't even have promos or talk or have any personality, but she's undefeated other than that four-way match that was the main event of last week's episode, but Alexa Bliss undefeated in tag matches coming into tonight and singles matches. Asuka, she made her return after WrestleMania, and she's been feuding with Becky ever since. They were supposed to have a one-on-one match at Hell in the Cell pay-per-view 2 weeks ago, but then that was the whole Sasha and Naomi walking out, and that match got changed to a triple threat where Asuka did take the pin. So Asuka taking the pin there, and she's continuing the feud with Becky, and we'll find out more. Last week, she interviewed and made Becky lose to Dana Brooke in a 24/7 title match of all things. Becky Lynch started the year out. The crowd really did not want to boo her, but yet she was a heel, and it was just awkward. And she had a really like awkward match against Dewdrop for the title at Royal Rumble, where the sign was on fire, amongst other things. So, like, literally nobody paid attention to that match while it was going on. But she did have probably one of the best matches of WrestleMania with against Bianca Belair, where she lost the title, and now she's been like my precious and stuff like that, which a lot of people don't like. Like, she's acting like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, but I think that's just like I said earlier, that and the annoying Seth Rollins laugh. In my mind, I think they're just doing that because they're two likable people that are trying to be heels, and you like in 2022, like cheating isn't going to get people to boo you that much. You basically have to actually literally make them hate you. So you got Becky out here like my precious and stuff like that, and then you got Seth Rollins with his annoying laugh, and they're still both likable despite that because they're great wrestlers and likable people. So neither of them, both of them probably shouldn't be healed, but they are. I don't quite sure the answer to that. But Bianca, like I just said, won the title from Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. Um, Basically has beaten she anytime that Rhea challenged for like the number one contendership, so Bianca would beat her, and now that's who's the new number one contender after last week's main event is Rhea. So that'll be your match maybe at Money in the Bank, and we'll see if Rhea can finally beat Bianca. But Bianca has had a good resurgence ever since the tough 26-second loss to Becky Lynch at SummerSlam. She's rehabilitated that quite well, as much as she could, because she's a superstar. Carmella, she was the women's tag champion coming into the year. They were barely defending the title. I think one of either her or Zelina Vega was injured, which I think again Zelina Vega is injured. But they dropped the titles to Naomi and Sasha at WrestleMania and haven't really been doing anything since. She had broken up the alliance with Queen Zelina after that, but then like the very next week or 2 weeks after, uh, the two of them were helping Sonya Deville. So I'm not quite sure. They haven't really been on TV. Last we saw Carmella, she was in a backstage segment with R Truth talking about wanting to beat up Dana Brooke for the 24/7 title. So that shows how far she had fallen. They also mentioned during that um, I think it was I can't remember who said it, but they said Carmella was irrelevant all year, and basically. So WWE basically saying the women's tag team titles are crap, and we don't even know if we're ever going to see the women's tag team titles again. There's no champion and no announcements of what they're going to do with them. Dana Brooke, the current 24/7 champion, like I told you, she had that whole storyline with Reggie, and that seems to maybe die down, but it could pick back up any week. But currently, she's been having more matches in the ring. She's had she fought Becky Lynch again tonight, and we'll get into that. Dewdrop, she came in kind of a jokey character, but slowly but surely they're trying to take her more serious. And now Dewdrop's formed a tag team with fellow Scottish wrestler Nikki ASH, who she wants Nikki to take things more seriously. So hopefully, I don't know why it hasn't happened yet, but hopefully Nikki ASH will drop the superhero gimmick pretty soon. Liv Morgan, she's had a pretty good year, probably the best year of her career. She's been in main events, she's been in title matches, lost a lot of matches coming into this, but she did get a big win over Rhea Ripley going into the pay per view, which I thought was a bad look, but I guess it makes sense now that it makes it look like there was a reason to kick Edge out of the group because Rhea Ripley was able to beat Liv Morgan just fine by herself, and now under Edge's tutelage, Liv Morgan not only beat Rhea in that Raw match before the Hell in the Cell pay per view, but then she got the upper hand on Rhea after the match. So Rhea went from destroying Liv before on her own to then losing the Liv once he under Edge's tutelage. So that's you can somewhat say now looking back that it made sense for them to kick Edge out, and you can look at that. Not, of course, they're not explaining this like I'm explaining it to you, like they should be. Like even if that wasn't the original story, use that as a story. I told you about Nikki Ash. Hopefully, any week now she drops the gimmick, but she did go from the normal blue and gold outfit for the superhero to black and gold, and then here it is right here, inactive to a knee injury. Queen Zelina, same story as Carmella, except we haven't seen her since. She did win last year the first ever Queen's Crown, which is the Queen of the Ring equivalent or the King of the Ring equivalent. Rhea Ripley, I pretty much told you her story. Sonya Deville started out the year as the co authority figure alongside Adam Pearce. She was abusing that power forever, and eventually she lost it. And we haven't seen her since she lost to Bianca Belair in a title match. Tamina, she's been stuck in the 24/7 segments as well. Her and Dana Brooke, I suppose, if they want to revive the women's tag team division, I'm guessing they would team Tamina and Dana Brooke just through all their associations in these segments. I'm assuming that would be a tag team that would form. And man, that went a lot longer than I thought. So I don't know if I'm going to do that for SmackDown and NXT, but let's get into the show finally. It took place in Wichita, Kansas tonight, and it did not really get, from what I heard, and this was, of course, there could have been a bunch of people that came late, but I think in 2022, everybody just buys their tickets online. Like, nobody's going to the arena and then buying the tickets. But the reports were it was a 15,000 seat arena, and WWE had sold about 4,000 tickets for tonight's Raw, which might be one of the modern era record low for an event. And many reasons for this. Of course, some of it is WWE's fault. For of course uh, the John Cena reign of terror drove any Attitude Era fans that remained were driven off by that whole decade eventually. And if they had stayed, then they found this suffering succotash guy taking over the John Cena role, and then they bailed at that point. I bailed at that point as well, but I came back. Just can't keep me away. As much as I hate some of the stuff they do. Anyway, and that's why I'm thankful for all the other companies. But I'm a fan more so of companies. I'm a fan of wrestlers and following a wrestler's story. So that means following their story all the way through whatever company they're in. Like for instance, the Rock and Roll from the Rock and Roll Express. Ricky Morton is still wrestling to this day. He was on the NWA pay-per-view tag teaming with his son, and he's been wrestling since 1977. And you can go through, you could just spend like months and months and months just following, only watching every Morton match that is available from television and stuff, and follow his entire career, and it would just be this amazing arc. So that's kind of how I look at wrestling. Like, I don't really have there's things I like and dislike about every company. Like, I like New Japan because it was more sports orientated, but now they've kind of changed to more sports entertainment as well. So, but there's still things I like there, and I like all kinds of different. I like a variety show in my wrestling. I like to laugh. I like to cry. I like to see great matches. I like to be. Like the Cody stuff was intense. I don't want to see that too often, but that's a heightened emotion where I don't even like. I want to look away because it's so tough to watch. So anyway, record low attendance from what it looks like tonight. It looked like when we got there, the whole top portion, the hot top half of the arena was tarped off, and they probably moved everybody. So if you look behind the camera that we see, I'm guessing it was like all empty seats, unless, like I said, they got some late people to join. But some of it is WWE's fault, and of course, it wasn't their fault that the one of the major stars they got going, Cody Rhodes, got injured. So now no more Cody Rhodes, and they pretty much sacrificed everyone to either Brock Lesnar, who then got sacrificed to Roman Reigns. So everything has been sacrificed in WWE to make Roman Reigns look strong. Roman Reigns has both titles, so Raw doesn't even have a champion anymore, and they have a heel champion as the US champion, which the US title and the Intercontinental title have been so devalued at this point. It's not even like that big of a deal that you're the champion. So between no major stars, although I still think, like I said, Raw has an amazing roster as far as they have Seth Rollins, AJ Styles, KO, Bobby Lashley, among others. Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode are both good. Rey Mysterio's there. So even without Cody, this is a great roster. But let me switch back over to the Raw logo. That went way longer than I thought. There's a lot of people on the Raw roster. All right. So the other reason that so they sacrificed everyone in the Roman Reigns. If you remember, like Brock Lesnar killed everyone as soon as he got into the Elimination Chamber. He also killed everyone at the Day One pay-per-view. So everyone has been looking like Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns were on this upper pedestal where then Roman Reigns beat Brock and Brock's no longer gone. So Roman Reigns is up here and everybody else has just been made to look like they're down here, which is not a good business practice. You have to have multiple stars so that whoever your main star he has people that they want to see him fight. This was kind of brought up on the New Japan broadcast where they were saying, yeah, Okada's been a great champion, but they thought that Jay White, the challenger, was the one that brought everyone to the building that night and sold all the tickets. You need good challengers, you need good opponents, you need multiple stars, and you can't just sacrifice everyone. There needs to be a constant flow of, if you think of it as like the life force or the life stream from Final Fantasy 7, like everything like once it kind of goes all to something, like everything else starts to wilt away. And that's kind of how they made everybody look. Like, remember, Theory was the only one that was able to last more than 20 seconds against Brock Lesnar in the chamber match. And even he got made to look like a joke because he just ran away the whole time and eventually got killed. And then lost to Pat McAfee at WrestleMania. So Um, like I have high hopes for Theory. I think Theory's great, but they like even him. They're the only champion on Raw they made look kind of weak. And then the other thing is everybody's really into this Golden State Warriors. and Boston Celtics NBA Finals. And Game 5 was tonight, a pivotal Game 5. Both teams were tied at 2. You need to get 4 wins to win the series. So whoever wins Game 3 is only 1 win away, with 3 games possible remaining. So you only have whoever wins tonight only has to win 1 of the remaining 3 to win the title. So it was a pivotal Game 5. I think a lot of people, and then there's another factor, yet another factor. So I'm not trying to give WWE a ton of excuses. I started out by saying they created the problem themselves by not having the stars they needed, and the one star they had, it wasn't quite their fault. So there's the first excuse I'm going to throw out. The second excuse: NBA playoffs are really pivotal. Everybody's getting really into the NBA playoffs. And the third thing is, with the inflation that's going around in America, everything costs more. Gas prices are up, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people had to decide if they wanted to stay home, save some money, and just watch the NBA playoffs or the NBA finals on TV, or do they want to spend money, spend the gas money, buy popcorn and a drink or some beers, and spend a ton of money for a Raw that they don't even know what they're gonna get, what kind of stars there's gonna be, and stuff like that. So all of it makes sense. All of that leads to I expect next week. If I think by then maybe the finals will be done. I could look real quick while I talk, but I'll look up the final schedule. So all of that, I'm assuming attendance will be back up next week, but probably not by a lot. I mean, they do need to create some new stars, and we'll get into this show, and we'll see if they had any luck. So Golden State did win tonight by 10. Golden State with the lead 3-2. And Game 7 will be on Sunday. So next week's Raw won't have any competition from the NBA Finals. I didn't look up the NHL Finals, but that's not nearly as popular. But that's kind of how you can explain why there was such a low attendance for the crowd. And tonight's not really going to be a good barometer to tell if people are over with the crowd, because even if they're cheering on people, it was hard to hear the crowd because there wasn't very many of them. So let's just get into the show. Miz TV is going to kick off the show, and we see Miz in the ring. And he starts to introduce someone, but is quickly interrupted by Paul Heyman, who's in the ring next to him. So Paul Heyman does his big intro and talks about Roman and stuff like that. Then Miz does some exposition work about how Money in the Bank works and the history of Money in the Bank and how he won it and cashed in twice and stuff like that. And then even like he talks about how you can interrupt anybody, and he starts to sing his own theme song. He's like, "Awesome! I came to play." That was pretty funny. Miz brings it around to we already know, and then he looks over at Paul. Whoever wins is going to cash in on Roman. Roman's the only champion. And Paul says, well, simply whoever it is, they're going to fail. They have 0% chance of beating Roman Reigns. And then Paul mentions that this week on SmackDown, it will indeed be Riddle versus Roman Reigns for the undisputed, unified, universal title. And Paul's about to tell us that he added some extra stipulations, but then Riddle's music interrupts, and or maybe just interrupts in general. But Riddle's mad that Miz interrupted him, or Miz is mad that Miz gets on the mic and he's mad. Riddle, you've interrupted me 2 weeks in a row now. And then Riddle brings up, or Paul Heyman's like, oh, you got some balls to come out here. And that, of course, gives Riddle the chance to mention Miz's balls for the second week in a row. So awkward there. But decent promos here by everyone, but kind of long-winded. I didn't even write down it. They didn't really talk about much. But then we get to what the stipulations were going to be. So Paul says if Riddle, nothing extra. If Riddle wins, he gets all the gold. But if Riddle loses to Roman, then Riddle will never be able to challenge Roman for those titles ever again. So as long as Roman's champion, if Riddle loses, Riddle will never get another shot at Roman. And it's at this point Paul brings out the Usos. So the Usos are out, and the Street Profits basically come out right away, and they tell us it's going to be Montez Ford versus Jimmy Uso next, and we go right to an ad break. So when we come back, Riddle, Heyman, and Miz are all gone. And this should be a good match. Jimmy Uso versus Montez Ford. Everyone loves Montez. He's got a bright future. Jimmy Uso, we know, is good in the ring. We get the crowd's really into Montez. They got the "We Want the Smoke" chant going pretty strong here. At some point, we get a graphic for KO versus Ezekiel later, and I completely forgot they set that match up last week. It was in a kind of awkward way, but that match will be later. Decent stuff so far. Jimmy gets in control as we go to break. When we come back from break, Jimmy's still in control, but eventually Montez gains the advantage. But then gets snuffed out, and Montez is selling his lower back a lot at this point. We get a pop up Samoan drop that looked great from Jimmy for a 2.5. Superplex attempted by Ford, but it failed. Huge jump to the top rope by Ford, like leaping all the way up like Kurt Angle used to do in TNA. But then a frog splash by Ford right after that, once he knocks Jimmy down, is countered by the knees up, and it makes sense. The knees led directly to Jimmy picking up the win, and if you remember, Montez Ford has the highest jump on his frog splash like ever of anyone in the history of wrestling, and landing on knees probably is enough to pick you up a quick 1, 2, 3 after that. So that's what Jimmy does. He gets the win, and we just quickly move on to a picture of Seth in the backstage, and it looks like he's getting ready for a sit-down interview. So we get a quick recap of all the Cody and Seth stuff, all the Hell in the Cell stuff, and the Seth teasing the face turn, but then turning on him and hitting him, Cody, with the sledgehammer last week. So then we go to ad break. And let me just get a drink real quick. Allergies have been crazy, and it's also about 100% humidity outside right now. All right, so then we come back from break. We get Kevin Patrick, and he's going to sit down interview in the backstage Seth Rollins. And Seth is actually holding the sledgehammer. We're assuming it's the same sledgehammer from last week. And more than likely is on the truck when they bring the ring. I'm guessing that same sledgehammer is always there. Whether they use it that night or not, they always got that same sledgehammer, maybe even 2 of them with them. But Seth holding the sledgehammer tells us that the American Nightmare is now over, and Monday Night Rollins is back in business. Kevin Patrick asks him what's next. Asks Seth Rollins what's next. Seth says that one of his greatest moments in his entire career involves the briefcase, pretty much insinuating that what's next is Seth wants to win the briefcase, which I think there's a high possibility that Seth will win the briefcase. Then we set up Seth having the briefcase, Cody winning the Royal Rumble, and both of them having a shot at WrestleMania. So I can see whoever the champion is having a triple threat match next year WrestleMania, Seth cashing in, whether it be in the match just like he did in WrestleMania 31 or maybe it was 32. But it was in San Francisco, and I remember that much, where Roman was supposed to win, and the whole Anoa'i family got really mad that Rollins ended up winning. But I think it was 31. 32 was then in Dallas, I believe. So Seth says he's going to fight AJ tonight in a qualifying match. So holy crap, that's going to be the match of the night. But Rollins says AJ's not on his level, and then just immediately out of nowhere, AJ, remember they're in a backstage interview in the locker room, AJ out of nowhere punches Seth in the face and says in the camera, "That's for Cody." And then we go to a recap of Becky Lynch and the whole 24/7 segment last week. Dana Brooke comes out with the 24/7 title. She looks great. And before going to break, we see Becky backstage mean mugging the camera, which was kind of funny. Um, and we're told later tonight, which it actually ends up being the main event, the last segment of the night, is a pose down between Lashley and Theory. So we got that to look forward to. Tell all your friends. Becky Lynch is now out after the break. Another great outfit. Becky jumps Dana Brooke before the bell even is able to ring. There is no ring of the bell. Becky just throws Dana outside, hits her into the barrier, hits her on the announce table a couple of times, and then Becky grabs a mic and then she tells us the last time she was in the Money in the Bank, she was cheated out of the win. Then she goes back to beating up Dana Brooke, and Asuka's music then hits at this point. Then Asuka and Becky brawl. It leads to the ring. Asuka wins the exchange as Becky retreats. And before Becky can get to the locker room, Alexa Bliss music hits. So Alexa Bliss is out to the ring, and Becky talks some trash to Alexa, but as she's walking by, but Alexa just ignores her in her bland baby face, sedated state. Basically, Alexa's like in a sedated state at this point. Um, Not as much as Linda McMahon, but back in the day, but just has her happy meds basically. Liv Morgan and Alexa versus Dewdrop and Nikki Ash is going to be our next match as we go to a break. So I know a lot of fanboys or fangirls of Liv and Alexa. Both are going to be excited about that. I'm not a big fan, so I'll be rooting for Dewdrop and Nikki here, even though they don't have any chance, and especially because they tell us the winners of this tag match are both qualified for the Money in the Bank. So this is a Money in the Bank qualifying match. Liv Morgan, Alexa Bliss teaming up to face Dewdrop and Nikki Ash. Nikki Ash has her new gear tonight. It is still the superhero gimmick, sadly, but it is in mostly all black with a little bit of gold, and it looks much better, at least. Dewdrop also has new gear. It's got like holographic snake skin on the middle parts. And also new gear for Liv Morgan's, who's basically wearing a lingerie bra. So a lot of new gear in this match. Pretty good match, but of course, not given any length, which makes it a bad match by proxy or whatever by default. You can't really have a good 4, 5, 6 minute match. Maybe 6, but that's pushing it. You need 10 minutes at least to be able to tell a story. Otherwise, it's just a short match that's meaningless, and we're never going to remember this match in a month, let alone in a year. Not that you can remember every match that happens on Raw, but you know what I'm saying. Nothing meaningful comes out of this, and Liv and Alexa qualify, of course. So we're shown that Lacey Evans, Liv Morgan, and Alexa Bliss are the 3 that have qualified so far. And there's also 4 vacant spots left. So by that math, it looks like a 7-woman Money in the Bank ladder match. Maybe there'll be a special 8th entrant, and I'm hoping it's Bailey, but we'll see. That'll be in a couple. It's only a couple weeks away on July 3rd. So 3 weeks away yesterday is when Money in the Bank is. We get a recap of the Judgment Day from last week. And then I think we go to a break, but I can't quite remember, but we go right from that. Of course, Judgment Day got, they kicked out Edge and Finn Balor joined and turned heel. So then we go from that to another recap of last week's Ezekiel and KO stuff, where again, I said it was kind of awkward, but here we are. KO versus Ezekiel now. And it pretty much picks right up where they left off at Hell in the Cell with some great intensity. They brawl to the outside pretty much immediately. And we get a graphic for it's going to be Ray versus, this is where we're told it's going to be Ray versus Veer later on. So I write here that it should be good, but spoiler alert, it's not. So give me a second here. I'm going to try and get rid of these hiccups. Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully they're gone. And like I said, high intensity in this match between KO and Ezekiel. They pretty much brawl to the outside immediately, and it's at this point we get a nasty. They show a replay and everything, and Corey puts it over huge, like how nasty this is. KO gets slammed, and his back hits like the entire length of the edge of the steel steps, and it just looks devastating. I don't know why KO's out there doing this in a somewhat meaningless match against Ezekiel, a rematch of a match we already saw at the pay per view. And as I'm writing in my notes here, that it's going to take KO like an hour to get out of bed tomorrow, no joke. And that's when Corey basically says KO's going to be feeling this like at least until Wednesday. So nasty there. Um, but the match doesn't last too much longer after this. A stunner is countered by that good knee lift that Zeke has. Great move yet again. And KO earlier when he was on the outside had heard the announcers say Ezekiel, and he's like, it's Elias. So then that happens again. KO is on the outside. He hears the announcers and he freaks out. He's gets KO goes all the way up, standing on the announce table, and is yelling that no, that's Elias. And the referee counts to 10 while this is happening, and the bell rings. KO's all shocked and mad that he lost, but then he runs off. And Zeke gets down the mic and he says he's not done with KO, but he has bigger fish to fry. And Ezekiel wants him the money in the bank, and he's all zeked up because he called Elias, and Ezekiel tells us Elias will be here next week on Raw to perform a concert. So I don't know what we're gonna do with this, but Ezekiel does mention it older, so I don't know what we're gonna get. Maybe it'll be like a gray beard on Elias or Ezekiel, and then he's gonna sing. I don't know what we're gonna get, but I am kind of interested. And it's at this point I thought KO was gone, but you hear him yelling in the background. You don't even see KO on the screen, but he's yelling and that he's just mad. I forget what he says, but it's hilarious because I thought he was gone. Then we get a recap of Cedric getting told off at Hell in the Cell yet again by MVP, and then we see Cedric helping Lashley win the match at Hell in the Cell. So then we got MVP coming out to his music and Tron, which is kind of awkward, and Omos is with him, and indeed it's going to be MVP in a match next, and it's going to be against Cedric Alexander, which nobody wanted. We go to an ad break, or before the ad break, we get that. If you heard my SmackDown review, you already know my feelings, but we get John Cena helping a disabled child and with cameras all up in the face. And to my point, I heard a lot of everyone's like, oh, this is so inspirational. I can't believe I ever booed John Cena. Well, that's exactly why they're doing this. That's exactly why there's all the cameras in their face, and that's exactly why we're getting this shown to us on SmackDown and Raw. They don't want you to boo Cena. They've been doing this for 15 years. 15 years of exploiting troops, wounded troops, and cancer kids. And yes, he did a lot of good, but did you really need all the cameras there every single time? And did you need to show it on every segment for 15 years? Like, to make you not want to boo John Cena? Come on. Anyway, when we come back from break, MVP's on the mic. He runs down Cedric even more. He says Cedric belongs with the bottom feeders, while him and Omos belong up here. And then MVP points to the briefcase. So, quick side note: it looks like they want Omos in the Money in the Bank. We don't know if he's going to qualify or not, but in my universe mode on WWE 2K22, it was an 8-man ladder match, and computer controlled Omos won that ladder match. So potentially we could get an Omos Money in the Bank win. That nobody wants that, but that could potentially happen. Before much else is said, Cedric's music interrupts, and he comes down. He's got new gear, looks good. The bell rings. MVP turns away from Cedric right away just to tell Omos to focus, keep your focus on the Money in the Bank. Announcers put over that this is a disrespect. Cedric, like, not even paying attention to him as the match starts. Cedric gains control right away, but Omos quickly distracts. MVP gets him in control and then just wins easily. So, wow, another quick match for Cedric Alexander 2 weeks in a row where Cedric just loses in less than a minute or a minute. The announcers, two different announcers, I think it was Byron and the main announcer, not Corey, both say the words squashed, as in, like, oh, Alexander gets squashed by MVP here, and they say it twice. And then Corey says that Cedric's probably dumb for all of this. So a complete burial of Cedric Alexander, probably right there on the budget cut list on the next go around, alongside Mustafa Ali, among other people. But the burial of Ali and Cedric Alexander is uncomfortable to watch, to say the least. AJ Styles is now in the back. He said Seth made him sick last week with his treatment of Cody. You see that there's a bunch of stitches in AJ's head from that Hell in the Cell match where he got busted open. And Seth is now backstage somewhere else. He says AJ's just using the Cody thing as an excuse to defend his actions earlier, which is an interesting point, potentially. But then Seth dedicates this coming match to Cody in honor of Cody. So good heel work there. AJ is out first, and this is what I'm noting, that like one tiny mistake by AJ in this match, and AJ is going to be bleeding everywhere with those stitches in his head. So AJ is going to have to spend most of the match thinking about not getting his stitches knocked open, but I'm assuming it's still going to be a good match. And this is, in fact, a Money in the Bank qualifier match. Don't forget. So this is going to be good. They should give it length, and they do give it length, and it is good. Definitely go watch this match. When it comes to good matches like this, I don't necessarily write too much about, oh, then he hit him with the Falcon Arrow, and then there was this, and then there was that. I just, more likely, I'm going to tell you, go watch the match for yourself. And this is the one match tonight that you're going to want to watch. It is AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins, Money in the Bank qualifier. Rollins now comes out. AJ was already out. Rollins out to a good amount of boos. So still some people cheering Rollins, but getting more boos than ever after last week's stuff. And Rollins is over as a heel. So good decision by how they handled it last week by WWE on the Seth and Cody thing. AJ gains control, but then Seth runs away and does a throat thrust to gain control right back, and we go to break. But basically, like I said, go watch this match. It's got a great pace to it, great counterattack wrestling. This match wouldn't look out of place at a New Japan main event or an AEW main event. This is the stuff I like to see on Raw. I wish there was more of it, especially with the roster they have. There should be more than one long match on a 3-hour show. All the other matches, they don't give any length to, and it's never has a chance to ever become good. They give this match length, and they almost always give at least one match on every Raw some length, but give 2 matches length. I'm a firm believer that any card that has just one good match on it doesn't make it a good card. It could be the best match of all time, but there's no reason to watch the rest of the card if, like, there's not another good match per se. So I wish they would at least have 2 long matches, 2 good matches every Monday night, but at least we're getting one good match almost consistently for months and months and months now. Every single Monday night we get one good match. So this is our good match. Go watch it. Crowd's very split on booing or cheering Seth. AJ's covering his stitches on any headshot, so he's doing good on that, making sure he's not bleeding everywhere. AJ came close to winning twice, but there was fluky things that happened that prevented the referee from counting. Like the first one, AJ turned Seth around, but one of Seth's shoulders was laying on top of AJ's foot, so both shoulders weren't down. And by the time they got down, then he kicked out. So twice, little fluky things made it so AJ didn't have a good shot of winning. Seth at a point dodges the phenomenal forearm. AJ lands hard on that and sells the knee a tiny bit, but then immediately a chop block from Seth to AJ's knee. So now AJ's selling his knee a lot. And this is when I noticed it's 10 p.m. Eastern, and I'm pretty sure we never got the countdown clock tonight. I could see it coming back next week, and that's because the countdown clock has always been a countdown to 10 p.m. Eastern, and 10 p.m. Eastern happened to fall in the middle of a match that was already happening on this Monday Night Raw. So I don't think we saw the countdown clock tonight, but I expect it'll be back next week. And like I said earlier in this review, early contender for the best match of the week. It's going to be a hard one to knock off. I'll let you know next Monday Night Raw. Basically, I start the week again at Monday, so I'll let you know next Monday Night Raw if there's any other companies that have a match that can knock this one off its perch. It's going to be tough to do, but there should be some good matches coming up that has a chance to knock it off. Um, Counter by Seth at a point to get a quick pin out of nowhere. But again, there was some length to this match, and it was a good match. But a counter by Seth, quick pin on AJ. AJ immediately sells the knee and points that as the reason he lost. And the segment just quickly ends right after that. So move him in, move him out. Um, Friday, we get Riddle versus Roman for the Undisputed Championship. And now Riddle's out. So I don't remember them saying that Riddle had a match. I was surprised to see him here. Maybe I missed it, but I'm not sure who it's against. But the announcer didn't say that it was going to be a qualifying match. So no qualifying match here. Maybe Riddle will be in a qualifying match next week after he loses the Roman. Either that or there's at least a 5% chance. So I'm not saying it's zero. It's not 0% chance that Riddle comes out of this match with Roman as the winner, but it's low, but it's not zero. And I'm thinking, well, maybe Riddle's gonna fight Ciampa after Ciampa attacked Riddle from behind last week in the Miz TV segment, and we go to ad break. So that's what I'm thinking, and I am correct. It is going to be Riddle versus Ciampa, and of course, Ciampa's already in the ring. So 2 months in, Ciampa's had a few matches on Raw and stuff, but never once has had a entrance. So I don't know what they're doing with Ciampa. It looks like they're not fully committed because they're not even giving them an entrance. Miz is going to be on commentary for this match, and the commentators asked Miz about maybe it seems he has an association with Ciampa, but Miz says he's just been observing Ciampa. But then Miz does say, well, Ciampa could be the number one contender here, and then what? It seems like a big match for putting over that this is a big match for Ciampa. Given any length, this match could be amazing, Riddle versus Ciampa. But of course, I knew they weren't going to give it any length, and they did not. But what we did get was great. So like this was a great short match. Potentially something you might want to watch. It's not going to be long. It's a good showcase of some of Ciampa's moves that we haven't been able to see on the main roster yet. Um, when Riddle's doing like the drape DDT, Miz mentions on Raw that, well, you'd think Riddle would get his own moves, which was kind of funny. Of course, sadly, too short. RKO for the win. I write down here in my notes. This is the old WWE way of thinking that if you go toe to toe with a main eventer but lose, they think that the loser is still going to get over because he went toe to toe with the main eventer. But I don't think that's ever the case. And this is a tough loss for Ciampa, who hasn't been able to get going yet. So hopefully we get a Ciampa entrance next match. But at this rate, I don't think so. We get a recap of Rhea winning last week's main event, where she became the number one contender to Bianca's title. We've got Kevin Patrick in the ring now, and he introduces Bianca Belair. She gets a pretty good reception from the crowd. She's not dressed to wrestle, so it looks like an interview segment, and she's got a pretty cute looking pink outfit on, I would say. So we go to ad break at this point. We come back. Bianca's in the ring with Patrick. Her outfit looks even better up close. Really good designs on it. And she says Rhea and her have been pushing each other on Raw, trying to be the one up each other for many, many months. But now she doesn't even recognize Rhea. She thinks Rhea is now this soulless person that she doesn't even recognize. But Bianca's not intimidated. She's not going to be intimidated. And this is when Rhea interrupts. You hear Rhea talking, and Rhea's on the big screen, on the Tron. And Rhea says, "Judgment Day speaks with actions." Balor and Priest are there too, and they speak. Nothing quite of note, but everybody's tired of taking orders, and that's why they kicked out Edge. Edge's actions contradicted his words, which they're saying actions are the most important thing to them. Basically saying that Edge abandoned them and left them hanging at points, which you can go back to the Rhea losing the Liv and then also getting attacked by Liv after the match that potentially was the catalyst. So now they say everyone in the Judgment Day is equal. There's no leader. There's no omnipotent leader. Rhea now says something bad about the hometown of Wichita, which it looks like Rhea's going to pick up Edge's gimmick. But this is a much, much better promo by Rhea. Rhea says a few other things. I didn't write it all down, but I would say keep Rhea away from the in-ring promos and keep her to these backstage promos. The in-ring promos by Rhea makes her look way less intimidating than she looks, and she kept her intimidating presence with this backstage promo. So keep Rhea in the backstage promo. She's gonna talk. The Judgment Day music hits at the end of this, and it no longer has the "You think you know me, you never did." So it looks like they're keeping the music, but lost the Edge intro part, which was awkward last week after at the very end of Raw after they had already turned on Edge, and then it goes, "You think you know me?" So because it was like, "Oh, Edge is back from the hospital already," but no, that was just their music. But they fixed that part. Theory's in the back now. He said he's on a different level, and he said Bobby kicked him from behind, which is the actions of a coward last week, and that Bobby Lashley's not worthy of a U.S. title opportunity. Also, that Theory's the best investment McMahon's ever made, and then Theory name drops Cena. So looks like the rumors are true. We will get the Cena versus Riddle match at some point. I'm assuming that'll be at SummerSlam, and that maybe Theory beats Bobby Lashley at Money in the Bank by nefarious means, or maybe he drops the title but then beats Cena. But either way, all I know, if Cena wins, we riot. So Theory better beat Cena whenever that match happens, and Cena will be on Raw in 2 weeks. So not next week, but the week after. And I can't wait. Chad Gable's now with Otis, or Chad Gable's out and he's got Otis with him, and they tell us he's gonna fight Mustafa Ali. So we go to ad break. I see that Wendy's has a new strawberry frosty, so heads up to everyone that thinks that might be interesting. That sounds amazing to me. Definitely gonna try that. I'll let you know how it is. This is when they tell us Cena will be here in 2 weeks again, and when we come back, they start shilling some new Cena merch, the whole armbands, headbands, wristband combos. I hope Cena leaves soon after. Ali's now out, no big cheers whatsoever. And they tell us Lincoln, Nebraska will have Raw next week. So we'll see how Raw does in Lincoln next week. And that'll make what? 3 out of the last 4 Raws have been in the Great Plains, the middle of the country. Chad Gable gains controls, but then at a point Ali says "shush," which is pretty funny. And then at a point, then Gable gets back in control and yells, "Thank you." So that was entertaining, but it's going to be a short match again. Good pace to the match, however. And Gable actually gets the win with Otis's help on a distraction. So Ali went from losing the U.S. title to being on main event last week, and now just losing a quick match to Gable, even though Otis helped. So we get a quick recap of Veer and the Mysterios, where Ray last week helped Dom, or not helped, but made sure that Dom wasn't going to get beat up any worse by getting the DQ win for Veer. And then we get Ray coming out with Dominic as we go to ad break. So when we come back, Veer comes out. Again, the crowd's pretty quiet. Veer's in control. Dom looks worried. Ray's able to dodge some attacks, and we get a little bit of a classic Ray versus Big Man match. They They seem to be running with this whole fear veer thing, which is kind of cringe. Oh, because it rhymes, but doesn't mean it's good. Nasty knee to the face or chin of Ray at one point, and immediately into the cervical clutch, and Ray taps out within 1 second, and then just the segment ends. So, um, completely quick match, and they don't even celebrate the fact that this is the biggest win of Veer's career over Ray. It's just on to the next segment. So they tell us next week it's going to be Becky Lynch versus Asuka in a qualifying match. So that's pretty big news. And then they also remind us that Elias will have a concert next week. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully it's more entertaining and funny than cringe. Now we see them setting up a podium in the ring, and it's time for our main event, the pose off between Bobby Lashley and Austin Theory. I should have mentioned earlier, it seemed like maybe Riddle had new music. Or like a remix to his old music, and it wasn't quite as good as the old, which seems to be a common theme. Like Walter's new music, so they changed it once and now they changed it twice, and now the latest one is terrible, even worse than the original new one. So Theory's out first, and he's got a hands-free mic, so that tells me maybe this segment's not going to be terrible. Because before we go to break, we can already hear the trash talking from Theory. So this should be maybe interesting, better than it should be anyway, with Theory having a hands-free mic. So we come back from break and we see that Theory is definitely the newest member of the Randy Orton Baby Oil for Boys Club. If you remember that from back in the days, Theory is just all baby oiled up. Looks to be in the biggest shape of his life. He's got a ton of muscles. Maybe Vince put him on the gas. Who knows? And we got Adam Pearce out here to be the moderator slash host slash MC, whatever you want to say. And then we get to the posing. Lashley's out there now too. There's like accompanying music while Adam Pearce is like emceeing it, which makes it kind of funny. It wasn't like the worst in the world. Theory's up first. He's definitely jacked, and his traps are insane. But then Lashley gets up there, and you just know, even if it wasn't like kayfabe, like Lashley clearly has the bigger frame to put muscles on, and he's been working out probably as long as Theory's been alive. So Lashley much bigger and the clear winner. Even Pierce is going to put it to a fan vote, but Theory interrupts. Theory's begging the crowd for cheers, but quickly loses the fan vote. And then Theory says, well, there's one more pose that he wants to do. And then Theory, I had already written down the Randy Orton Baby Oil for Boys Club, but then we get Theory squirting baby oil in Lashley's eyes, a drop kick to Lashley out of the ring, and Theory takes selfies on the podium as we go off air to pretty much some of the biggest boos of the night. Maybe Seth Rollins got a few bigger boos, but Theory getting some good reactions here as we go off air. And that'll do it. Not too bad. The pre-show I did with the running down the roster took as long as it did to run down this card. Not a lot came out of this. The biggest news of the night was the qualifiers for the Money in the Bank. So we've got on the women's side on SmackDown, Lacey Evans qualified, and now we've got Alexa Bliss and Liv Morgan with 4 spots remaining. We already know that next week it'll be Asuka versus Becky Lynch for one of the qualifying spots. That leaves potentially 3 more after that. And if you just want to quickly think who it could be, maybe Raquel Rodriguez, of course, and potentially Shotzi. Now, in my universe mode on the women's side, Shotzi won the Money in the Bank, and I would love to see Shotzi win the Money in the Bank. What the story that went on my universe mode was that Shotzi won Money in the Bank, then through a lot of heel tactics and choosing a match where Ronda was already tired just from a previous match, Shotzi won the title, then retained the title against Ronda by running away and doing heel tactics. Then it seemed like they gave me a cutscene where Shotzi was no longer scared of Ronda and just wanted to fight her straight up. So that was the catalyst for the face turn, and I eventually, after Shotzi lost the title to Bailey, I had Shotzi and Ronda form a tag team. So maybe this is the catalyst. We did have the beginning of that this week. I did that probably 3 weeks ago in my universe mode, and now this last week on SmackDown, Ronda fought against Shotzi. So maybe that's the beginning of the story of them coming together, just like my universe mode predicted. We shall see. On the men's side of the qualifiers, we got Seth Rollins qualifying tonight, and it's a good bet to put your money that Seth Rollins is going to win that briefcase and hold it all the way until Cody returns, probably to win the Royal Rumble. So we'll probably be looking at going into WrestleMania 39 in Hollywood with Cody Rhodes as the Royal Rumble winner and Seth Rollins holding the briefcase. And we'll see where it goes from there and who the champion is, and if there's two champions or only one. We shall see where that goes. A lot of things to be decided. Maybe Riddle wins the Universal title, unified title on SmackDown this week. You never know. So I'll be here to report on all of that, and I'll be back tomorrow night to report on NXT 2.0, one of my favorite shows of the week, not for its wrestling, but for all the gimmick and character work, and you never know what kind of crazy character you'll see next. So I'll be back tomorrow night to cover that. I just want to say a special, I don't know, not a shout out, but I hope that Jeff Hardy can get the help he needs. He has been arrested for yet another DUI, blew near 2.9, where the legal limit is 0.8. So no reason for this man to be driving, inexcusable. I know addiction is a tough disease to crack. I know that firsthand, and still doesn't excuse getting behind the wheel in that state. So hopefully Jeff Hardy can get the help he needs, and that will definitely change the big TLC three-way ladder match that was scheduled for Dynamite. We'll see where they go with that. I wouldn't mind seeing Christian Cage oddly team with Matt Hardy, even though he's the manager of Jurassic Express. But maybe we'll just get Hardy's versus, or Hardy's will be taken out of that match, and it'll just be Young Bucks versus Jurassic Express. So we'll see about that on Wednesday. I might take Thursday off, or I might be on for Impact and NXT UK reviews. And if I don't come on Thursday, I'll definitely be here Friday night for the second edition of the Wonderful Wrestling Podcast, where I'll be reviewing that night's SmackDown and Rampage, as well as that night's NXT Level Up. And then, of course, if I don't do the Thursday show, that Friday night show will also include Impact and NXT UK. So this weekend we've got Impact is hosting Slammiversary. I can't remember if it's Saturday or Sunday, but that'll be this weekend. In addition to another New Japan show will be this weekend, and I'll also be, whenever I get the release of NWA Power, I'll get the follow-up show to this weekend's Always Ready NWA pay-per-view, which you can find the review on my channel. So I've gotten to, on my universe mode, I've gotten to, last thing I did was WrestleMania 39, and now I've been setting up year 2. I'm going to go into year 2. I am going to end the brand split. So I've ended the brand split. Everybody that was on SmackDown is just now on Raw, and Raw and SmackDown will all be together. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to let it be more random this time. Last time I stopped letting the randomizer go, and I started booking stories that I wanted to put on myself. So this time I put it, ended the brand split, and I'm going to just have it randomly give me the matches, and then I'm going to play them. So look out for that. I'm probably going to start that maybe again tomorrow. We'll see. I'm looking to I've got 3 more NXT new recruits from the Performance Center. Finally got their new trademark names. So I'm going to try and create those guys, and so that when I start year 2 here of Universe Mode, they'll be involved. But like I said, you're not going to find a deeper NXT on Universe Mode than mine. So go check that out. I've already got 82 episodes. We finished year 1, and we're going to go into year 2. Once I finish year 2, I might go into AEW, New Japan, NWA. So a lot of things are going to be on this channel. So again, if you want the New Japan Dominion review, that's already on the channel, as well as the NWA Always Ready. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for NXT 2.0. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace.